Well, welcome. We have continued our open meeting. I'd like to start by acknowledging that we're holding this on the traditional lands of the Kalama Nation. Our first item is, unfortunately, I have to advise that the city's Chief Administrative Officer, Lisa Bhopal Singh, has accepted a position with another local government and will be leaving her position with the city of Powell River. We thank Lisa for her service to the city and wish her the very best with her new endeavors. Council will begin the process for filling this important role prior to Lisa's departure on April the 17th. We have had changes to our procedure manual, bylaws. I'm going to ask our corporate officer to do a quick review so everybody can understand why things may appear to be slightly different.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, there are a number of changes to the council procedure bylaw and council procedures. We spoke about some of them at Tuesday's Committee of the Whole. Some of them are unique to Committee of the Whole. Some of them are unique to council. You'll notice on on the agenda under new public input period is something that's new, where members of the public have an opportunity to provide comment for a maximum of 2 minutes with a 3-person maximum, but only on items listed under legislative matters, committee recommendations, and new business. So this has been put on the agenda to make sure that council and the public are aware of that. So for this particular agenda, there are 2 bylaws under legislative matters, Waterworks Regulation to adopt rates, and an amendment to not the upcoming 5-year financial plan, but the 2024 one. So I just want to make that clear for council and those in the gallery that there is no item on today's agenda dealing with the upcoming 2025 budget. Also, there's a draft bylaw for code of conduct. And then under new business, a proposal for a 2-person, 2-council member working group to work with council and the Powell River Community Forest. The other thing is that minutes now appear under the consent agenda. In this case, the only item on the consent agenda is the minutes. The announcements, that is now part of the new business heading. It includes announcements, and so that was something that similarly on the Committee of the Whole under new business is when you'd also talk about community engagement. So that's something new. It's a different place on the agenda, but that is the place on the agenda to be speaking to announcements. Unlike Committee of the Whole, for council meetings, you require a mover and a seconder for the motion to be on the floor. There are also some differences that council members cannot speak more than once to the same motion, or speak on any matter you have a maximum of 5 minutes to speak on any matter, and a response maximum of 3 minutes. Also, only 1 amendment to the main motion, and you cannot amend an amendment to the main motion. So if you do have amendments to the motion, there's just 1 at a time, and you can't amend the amend motion. There's also a hard end date or stop time for both the Committee of the Whole and council meetings. In this case, at 9, if we're still in session at 9 p.m., a unanimous vote of all of council will be required to continue past 9 p.m. So those are my sort of observations to start with, Your Worship. As I mentioned on Tuesday, this is a new to all of us and a work in progress. And as we find things that might not work, we'll make a list of them, and perhaps in about 5 or 3 to 6 months, we can make any amendments at council's direction. And so those are my opening comments just on how some of the more significant changes to how you conduct your business with the new council procedure bylaw.
Thank you very much. Councillor Palm.
Thank you, Your Worship. Because of this new procedural bylaw, I've got to ask a couple of questions. We've already adopted the agenda previously earlier tonight, but I'm going to ask for something that we've done in the past to alter the number of items and when they come forward. And seeing the large turnout tonight, I have a feeling that a lot of them here are connected to the new business item, which refers to our community forest. So for that, in that regard, I would like to move item 15.1 up on the agenda to fit somewhere after we adopt the minutes of February 20th. And they won't have to sit through the whole meeting if they do not wish to do so.
I'm going to ask our CO just to comment procedurally.
Yeah, council can do that by resolution if council wants to, Your Worship. It would require a council resolution. It would be different than your. I don't see any reason why you can't consider that. So that be council's discretion whether to move it up or not.
See where council will allow that.
I'll second the motion.
Councillor Almeida.
Thank you, Mayor. Since the CEO just talked about announcements falling under new business, and this is our only other item under new business, might I suggest maybe a slight amendment to Councillor Palm's motion that we include the amendments before discussing the community forest, and then the gallery gets the benefit of hearing all the announcements, sorry, and then we can discuss the community forest.
Okay, just so I'm clear, right now under new business, we have 15.1. What is your suggestion on where we move that up to?
Well, Councillor Palm had suggested after the consent agenda, so that would make it, let's say, section 11. And I would say 11.1 announcements, 11.2 community forest working group.
We have a motion. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Passed unanimously.
Your Worship, I have one other item I'd like to broach the topic since this is a new procedure bylaw, and that is notice of motion. Now, I did not bring that forward earlier today because I didn't have time. Can I propose a notice of motion that will go on to next council meeting at this point in time?
Your Worship, the order for that is at the end, 17. So likewise, you would need to move it up if you want to consider that before where it is on the agenda right now. It's on the last page of the agenda. Item 17 is according to the order of the procedure bylaw.
Councillor Almeida.
Thank you, Mayor. Just for clarification, I believe Councillor Palm just wants the notice of motion on the agenda. I don't think the order is relevant. Am I correct?
Well, the community forest, so it might be relevant to a lot
Okay.
of people in here.
Sounds good.
Yes, Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Notices of motion are just notices of motion. They're not up for discussion or part of the public comment period. That motion would be on a subsequent agenda. And so if people did want to speak to that motion under the notice of motion, then they would come to the council meeting where that motion was actually on and up for decision by council. And I also wanted to reiterate that the community forest item that is on the agenda tonight is specifically about the working group. And so our discussion tonight is about the working group, and I know that council will have likely other discussions about community forests in the future related to the budget, but tonight it's specifically about the formation of the working group. Thank you.
So,
So, Your Worship, my motion is in regard to community forest and in regard to the formation of the working group. So I'm just going to put it out there so that it appears on a future agenda for discussion. I would
Okay.
hope council would allow me to do so.
So under item 17, then you can do that.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask our CO, what is the procedure for?
No, Your Worship, members of the public can observe a council meeting. They're not participants unless the procedure, bylaw, or council permits them to be. And there are places for public input period at the beginning of the meeting and then points of clarification at the end. So that's the procedure.
Thank you. So we'll move to the public input period.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. My name is Mark Hassett. I'm a citizen of Powell River and a board member on the community forest. I'm speaking on my own behalf. I am not speaking for the community forest. As I understand, you are proposing to take all of the community forest funds into general revenue and grant up to 10% to a limit of $250 per year to the nonprofit. Currently, the nonprofit average annual portion is $840,000. City average annual portion is $1.26 million. If the city increases to 90%, that would be $630,000 more, which would be a tax decrease of 2.3%, not the 17% that you were previously told by staff. As the regional board being consulted, I'm sure they will want their half. Of the 90% city portion, 50% will go to the regional district, which leaves $945,000 for the city. This is actually a $315,000 decrease, less than the city gets now. You do not have a revenue problem, you have a spending problem. Non-essential spending must stop. The trail between Brooks and the complex, rolling recycle bins for each city address, 12 new city positions in the last year, benefits for council, and the Zunga bus. I beg you to consider your decisions carefully. What do you want your legacy to be as a council and mayor? The shutting of the complex, the destroying of the community forest. Thank you for your time.
I'd like to raise a point of order, Chair.
Councillor Palm, did you have?
Chair,
Worship, I have a question.
I'd like to raise a point of order. Am I not here? Can you not hear me? I'd like to raise a point of order, Chair.
All right. Just like to point out that we do have procedure bylaws. Okay, and I understand people can often think they're self-important and can bypass those. I'm going to ask Councillor Isaacson to explain her point of order.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to remind the Chair and Council that the public input period is specific to items on the agenda today under the 3 items listed by our corporate officer. And so while the community forest is on the agenda today in the form of the working group, the budget-related decisions of the community forest are actually going to be at an upcoming agenda when we talk about the budget. And so I would ask for council and for speakers to be reminded of the fact that if we want to follow our procedure bylaw that we've recently implemented, we need to focus on the actual items that are listed within our procedure bylaw. And so the topic related to the community forest tonight is if the public has input on whether or not a working group should be formed. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Palm, did you have?
Yes, Your Worship, I don't want to weigh in on the point of order, but I have a feeling that what's being presented here and asked is relevant to what's on tonight's agenda because the discussions of the working group relate exactly to what was presented. So it's part of it. I don't understand the point of order.
Well, I think we could probably debate that for at least 3 hours, but we have until 9 o'clock to conduct this business. So I'm going to ask
Mayor, I would like you to rule on the point of order, please.
Well, there's no ruling involved. The speaker is finished, and I'm sure the next speaker heard what you said. So
No,
the CO
the way that
the CO made it very clear what you said. You repeated what the CO said. Call the point of order. The speaker is finished, and I'm sure the next speaker fully understands. So we're going to move to the next speaker.
I have one question of the speaker, Your Worship, if I may.
Point of order, Mr.
No, there are no questions to the people that are speaking under the public input section.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm actually going to speak on legislative matters 12.2. Okay, under this. So I went to the information session and I picked up this thing called Appendix B, Special Projects Plan. Appendix B is listed here. And I did an analysis of that. And what I actually want to comment on today is vehicles. In this, it calls for the replacement of 15 pickup trucks, 3 dump trucks,
Point of
2
order,
garbage
Chair.
trucks. No, it's relevant. It's Appendix B from here.
Okay, can
Point
we
of
just
or-
hold it a minute? Stop the clock. All right.
What?
No, that's fine. We have procedure. No, I have to ask what the point of order is, and then I'm going to refer to our CO and CAO to clarify.
Thank you, Chair. So the decisions tonight are not related to this year's financial plan. It's about the amendments that are required in order for us to incorporate new grant funding that we received and 2 projects that were deferred. And so the topics that the speaker is referring to are actually not up for decision by council tonight, but will be at a future meeting. Thank you.
I thought it said here Appendix B, and this says Appendix B.
Clarify.
So
Councillor
I'm here
Almeida-
talking about Appendix B.
Councillor
I don't want to
Almeida-
talk about money anyway.
Councillor Almeida, would you
If I could
provide clarification?
provide clarification, 12.2 is referring to last year's budget and plan. And I believe the document you have in your hand is this year's.
But it doesn't say that. It says Appendix B, Draft 5-Year Budget Plan 2024, but Amendment Bylaw.
That's the part you just read, the 2024. So what's going to be discussed today is all the changes that council made in last year,
Okay,
grants that came up that we
Okay.
weren't aware of, and we have to
okay.
legislatively adjust them, and that's the CFO will explain that.
I would have finished what I've said if I'd just gone on.
You weren't relating to this year's topic.
Okay, well, I'm going to say one part of this and then you could kick me out of here if you want to. I'm here to ask this council to ensure that under this, no vehicles are purchased in fiscal year 2025-2026 until the illegal tariffs imposed by the USA are rescinded. No vehicle should be bought from the United States of America until it is rescinded
Very
by
much.
this city.
Last speaker.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Thank you very much for having me. My name is Andrew Shostak, and I am here to provide public input regarding agenda item 15.1 regarding the Council Working Group, which will liaise with the Powell River Community Forest. I'm going to provide some background information that I feel would be valuable to those members of that working group. I'm here on behalf of the Cassette Regional Cycling Association, representing over 500 members within our community. I'm here today to highlight the immense value that the Powell River Community Forest Fund has brought to our region. The PRCF fund has provided crucial financial supports for projects that enhance the quality of life here for us in Powell River and the broader Cathet region. The fund's investment in trail development and maintenance has helped transform Mount Mahoney into an area sought after as a mountain bike location for people around British Columbia and globally coming to us. With over 5,500 volunteer hours dedicated to trail maintenance by volunteers annually, our association ensures that the trails remain safe, accessible, and well-maintained. PRCF's funding has been instrumental in making this possible. Funding for infrastructure such as the Mount Mahoney parking lot, the pit toilets in the parking lot, wood for bridges, and trail development. The PRCF fund has enabled the creation of upkeep of multi-use trails. Local businesses, including bike shops, restaurant, accommodations, have seen a growth with mountain bike tourism. New businesses have formed to be able to help those people coming here, as well as our own people within Powell River. Events such as the Allen Cup Series, as well, we have 600 racers coming here for the provincial mountain bike championship.
Thank you. Your time is up.
In conclusion, on behalf of the Cathet Regional Cycling Association and our dedicated members.
So if you respect City Council will respect you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate all of your work.
Now move to item 6, which is general matters.
Worship, I have a question, clarity for the audience, and that is, if there's a number of other people that want to speak tonight, council has a prerogative to vote to allow additional people to come forward to state their public input if council grants them that right.
For greater certainty, there has to be a unanimous vote on that. Are you suggesting a motion? Councillor Doudt.
Mayor, I'll move that council consider 3 more speakers on this issue if there are 3 who want to speak on it under the public input.
Okay, any further discussion? Councillor Southcott.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is a meeting of City Council. City Council that is elected by the entire community. I realize there's a lot of electors here. However, it's not the entire community. There is very important in our society, if we are to keep order and not descend into what is essentially anarchy, then respect is extremely important. Everyone here is here. It is a privilege to sit in this building. It's a privilege for everyone at this table and on the screen to sit at these tables. It's an extreme responsibility, but we all need to respect that. And it, in fact, is required by legislation. So I will only support this if this assembled body evidences the respect necessary and keeps quiet, actually, and listens, just like we're doing here. This is this will be my condition to support this. So I really need to be assured of that.
Any further discussion? Yes, Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I will reinforce what I've stated. I support it in the sense that I'm open to hearing about things from the public on items that are on today's agenda. In my sense, the last speaker was not speaking to the formation of the working group. It's information for the working group, but we're deciding on whether a working group should be formed and who should be on it. And so I know that a lot of people came here tonight wanting to speak to something that actually isn't up for decision tonight, and that could be frustrating. And there will be a future meeting where those items can be spoken about, and we want to hear from the public on, and we've been hearing a lot from the public on over email, and those emails get published on our public website. But I want us to focus on our procedure bylaw, which is items that are on the agenda tonight. And I implore council that we all uphold the procedure bylaw that we all discussed at length and we have passed as a council. Thank you.
Great. Any further comments? Okay, well, before we vote, I would like to reiterate that this period of time related specifically to items on the agenda. And we have received numerous emails. So if there's anybody is simply going to reiterate the emails that they've sent in or not respect the requirements, I will ask that speaker to leave. Oh, all in favor of the motion? Opposed? All right. We've agreed there will be 3 more related to the items on the agenda only.
Thank you, Council. I was planning on saying a whole bunch of other things today, but I've quickly pivoted.
Could you introduce yourself, please?
Oh, sorry, Kim Barton-Bridges. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I am speaking to the whatever 17.1, 15.1, the motion to establish a group to work with community forests. I think that's could be a great idea. I would love to see that group speak and to take information from all the nonprofits and charities who are here today in that decision-making process. I'm strongly involved with Prisma. Arthur Arnold was here a few weeks ago and spoke to the 2.2 economic return on every dollar that is spent on Prisma. So financially, the community really benefits from any money that goes to Prisma. I'm also very involved with, I'm the vice president of the board for Powell River, or the Cadet, or Four Tides Hospice Society. I was just looking back at our annual report for one, and I think what needs to be considered is the amount of volunteers we have in this community.
I'm going to interrupt you. I think this is unrelated to the agenda.
It's not. It's just I would like, when you have that working group together, I would like you to speak to the groups involved and understand.
Fine. That's a sufficient point. We've noted that. You have an
okay, and the other thing is that groups like the Four Tides Hospice Society, as much as I think it's unfair, any capital expenses that are needed to build buildings like a hospice building, which we have wanted for so many years, and it's going to be a reality. This community has to raise every dollar. It doesn't come from the province. It doesn't come from the
Point of order, Chair.
Sorry. Anyway,
we seem
please.
to have a difficulty understanding respect for council procedure here. So I know everybody wants to talk, but if you want council to listen, okay, you have to respect council and the procedure bylaw. So thank you very much.
Right.
My name is Cameron Bailey. I'm one of many beleaguered taxpayers in this town. I would like to correct Mr. Southcott that this is not a privilege to be here. This is a right.
Point of order,
we
Chair.
have the right. Oh, for God's sake.
We're speaking to items.
Yep. Continue, Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you. So the public input period again is to speak to items on the agenda, and so we're not in conversation with council right now. This was the intention of this public input period was to remove the difficulty we have of people wanting to be delegations after an agenda is published. And so if we could stick to that, there will definitely be a future agenda where the topic that people want to speak to is on, and that will be the right day for us to speak to those items. Thank you.
Good.
And I would have spoken to them without these constant interruptions from Councillor Isaacson. As it for the working group, I would propose that it be one of Councillor Palm, Councillor Doubt, and Councillor Elliott, because they're the only ones that voted against this taking of the community fund. And I think they're the ones that'll probably listen to people. Thank you.
Well, my name is Roger Artigs. Thank you for giving me this chance to speak. I would like to have a clarification. According to the way I read the bylaw, if you vote unanimously, it means that anybody who wants to speak is. Steve, could you tell us? Is that true? Is it within the bylaw for them to limit it to only 3 people?
Ask the corporate officer to,
You'd like me to answer to that, Your Worship?
please.
It's within council's prerogative to extend beyond the 3 that the procedure bylaw permits, and they chose to put a cap on it at 3, and that is purely within council's prerogative to do so.
Thank you very much. So speaking about the working group, I'm very happy to hear that there is a motion going forth. I was hoping that you would get to hear what that meant before we had the comment period, because it's kind of hard to comment about it unless we know what you're thinking about. I had written up some stuff and it doesn't really apply right now, but I welcome any chance for more dialogue between the community forest and council. It seems like there's been a breakdown in that, and that's sort of the root of the whole problem. I would also welcome any input and collaboration with the community that you see here tonight. This has been a complete surprise to us, and nature abhors a vacuum, and when there's a vacuum of information, all the crazy conspiracies flow in there, and that's why there's been this constant deluge of calls and emails that you've been getting. So please, I would say don't limit it to just 2 people. This is a huge issue that you all know about, we all know about. We're not trying to be unreasonable. You're not trying to be unreasonable. Let's, think this through. I wish I could be here for the next meeting, but I won't. And I guess I'm going to try to be respectful and not speak to the things I really would like to speak to tonight. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, we're now going to move to item 6.1, which is the proclamation of Dietitian's Day. Whereas dietitians are experts on the role of nutrition and whole person care, who have a unique combination of knowledge, training. Sorry, somebody got a comment? Wait. It would take a 5-minute break while those that want to leave can leave.
Your Worship. Your Worship.
I don't think they can hear Cindy because it's noisy as people are leaving.
Oh.
Thank you. We will reconvene now, and I'm going to read the proclamation on Dietitian's Day from the beginning. Whereas dietitians are experts on the role of nutrition and whole person care, who have a unique combination of knowledge, training, and experience to translate the complex science of nutrition into practical, healthy eating solutions. Whereas dietitians use their nutrition expertise to help individuals make positive lifestyle changes and to advance the health of British Columbians through health food environments. Whereas dietitians work throughout our community, hospitals, community health centers, long-term care homes, public health, health and wellness centers, food companies, universities, and in private practice settings. Whereas dietitians are advocates for advancing the health of the residents of Vancouver through food and nutrition. Whereas everyone is encouraged to recognize the contributions of dietitians and express appreciation for their commitment to promoting science-based food and nutrition to achieve optimum health for both today and tomorrow. Therefore, I, Ron Wasno, Mayor of Powell River, do hereby proclaim March 19th, 2025 as Dietitian's Day in the city of Powell River. Okay, we will now move to the consent agenda. Adoption of the minutes. Regular council meeting held February 20th, 2025.
Move we approve the consent agenda.
Seconded by Councillor Almeida. All in favor? Oh, just second. Councillor Palm.
We're adopting the minutes of February 20th at this point. I have one amendment to those minutes, and that is they got me included as here that day. I was in Mexico, so I was away with leave. I'd like that changed to the minutes, Your Worship.
Councillor Southcott.
This is a point of information. The way a consent agenda works is we remove what we want to make comment on. I'm only saying this because we're going to have to do this according to this new procedure bylaw that we adopted. And so the correct motion is to take that out, put it into section 11, and then address it. That's not necessary because Councillor Palm has essentially addressed what he wanted to, but I just wanted to make that point because we are going to need to do it correctly in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Southcott. So is Council happy? Yes, Councillor Elliott.
It sometimes helps to put a note in the agenda right before the consent agenda to help the chair remember to ask if there's any items that council would like to have removed from the consent agenda. And that makes that flow easier. So I just was putting that suggestion to our council and staff.
Thank you. Great. We have one item that's been removed from the consent agenda. Do we have a motion on the consent agenda as such? All in favor?
Point of clarification, we only have the one item on the consent agenda, so do we still, is Councillor Doubt's motion now a moot point, or?
I'm just trying to help out. Councillor Southcott has noted the correct procedure if we were doing it right. You know, there is an amendment. We could go through a whole rigmarole to do it right, or we could simply vote in favor and pass the minutes. And I'd be in favor of passing the minutes because I think we all agree they're correct now that they're amended.
Do we have a consensus on that? All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you, Councillor Doubt. We'll now move to legislative matters.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
We previously discussed moving 15.1 and the announcements before legislative matters.
Thank you very much.
And I think we were going to start with the announcements, I believe.
Are there any announcements from council? Councillor Dout.
Well, I think what Councillor Alameda had moved was that we move announcements and community engagement reports to this point on the agenda. No? Shaking your head?
Well, I had said community engagement goes to committee of the whole meeting, so that we'll discuss on a Tuesday. Councillor Palm had asked to move 15.1 new business, and I suggested since announcements were also new business that we just handle the announcements and then get into 15.1.
Okay, we're all trying to figure this out.
All right, we're going to start with Councillor Almeida with regard to announcements.
All righty. Well, I'll say if you are bored this weekend, it is your fault and not the fault of this community, because there are plenty of things to keep yourself busy with, starting with our Regals. About a year ago, we packed the house with the amazing Koi Cup. And this weekend, if you haven't seen the posters yet, the team from Rosslyn is coming to town for a best of 3 series starting tomorrow night. Friday, Saturday night games are 7 p.m. and Sunday, only if necessary, will be at 1:30. Last year was amazing at the Koi Cup, so hopefully we can fill the stands and it'll be a great weekend. Also on Saturday, the Performing Arts Festival has been going on for the last week and a bit, and Saturday night is the grand concert at the Evergreen. So if you're going to the Evergreen, that's great. Tickets are available at the door, but I would highly encourage the community, whether you're going to the Regals game or to the Evergreen, please carpool or find alternate ways, because that parking lot is going to be packed that night. So, and the last two things, the Flavor Festival has been going on. Sunshine Coast Tourism's been running a Flavor Festival that ends on Sunday. You can go to flavorfestival.ca, see all the different options. There's 15 locations in Powell River where are offering different promotions, different food deals. I had a chance to try a couple yesterday, hoping to get to one tomorrow. So go out, support our local food businesses, and hopefully this will become an ongoing festival. And lastly, the Townside Actors Guild are putting on a performance. It was on the front page of the Peak today. You can get all the details, but that's going on the next 2 weekends, 14th, 15th, and 21st, 22nd. It's being held at Magpies, and tickets are available at Magpies and Rocky Mountain Pizza. Thank you.
Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you.
Announcements?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. 2 announcements. I have to admit, Councillor Almeida, I zoned out for a second while you were speaking, and I don't remember if you got the Film Fest.
No.
But the Cut That International Film Fest starts on Friday with a kickoff. I believe is sold out. As far as I know, there actually might be a couple of extra screenings of some of the more popular films. Because the ticket sales have been so great. So a number of amazing films from around the world, and perhaps the most popular one, it could be the one that was filmed locally, screening tomorrow night, and as well as the next Sunday, so Sunday the 14th, I believe, in the afternoon, called Can I Get a Witness? And then another popular one that's being held for the closing night next Saturday, I believe is the 15th, is Kneecap, an Irish film. So a lot of fantastic films coming up. There's a matinee and an evening film most nights. You will see me there for quite a few screenings, hawking raffle tickets. So prepare to be slightly harassed into buying raffle tickets. And then also this Sunday coming up, there is a fundraiser that Coastal Women in Business is putting on for Grace House. It's at the Carlson Club, 4 p.m. on Sunday. And so you can get tickets at Carlson Club, and all proceeds go towards Grace House, which supports women and their families who are fleeing violence at home. Thank you very much.
Councillor Southcott.
Thank you, Worship. CD Saturday, day after tomorrow.
Councillor Dout.
Not tonight, sir.
Councillor Elliott.
No, nothing tonight, sir.
Councillor Palm.
Nothing, Your Worship. Thank you.
All right, Councillor Almeida and Councillor Isaacson have noted everything I was going to mention. So we'll move now to the Powell River Community Forest Working Group. We have a motion from Councillor Elliott. Councillor Elliott.
Yes, I would move that council form a working group with Mayor Wasnow and Councillor Elliott to liaise with the Powell River Community Forests Board and form recommendations to council regarding the community forest. If I get a seconder, I would speak to it.
You have Councillor Almeida. Seconded.
Thank you, Your Worship. So we, I'm of the belief that we need to improve our communications and our working relationship with the community forest. And I think it's an excellent way to start to create a small working group of council to initiate those discussions. There is, at this point in time, a lot of angst for some decisions being made with the budget, and there's a lot of things that the city would like to discuss with the community forest, and it is, in my opinion, a better way to make decisions once we've had conversations. And so I want to support that through being part of this working group. I did confer with Mayor Wasnow. He was amenable to that suggestion, and so I am putting this motion forward for council consideration so that we could conduct these conversations with the full support of council.
Thank you. So just before Councillor Palm, I just point out that this initiative was a result of conversation that I had with the chair of the Powell River Community Forest. And he thought 2 representatives from each organization would be appropriate. And then we can bring back items of significance, and the council and his board as a whole can meet. Councillor Palm.
Yes, Your Worship, thank you. With all due respect, I appreciate Councillor Elliott bringing this forward, because nothing gets resolved without greater communication and dialogue, and that's how you get to consensus. So I've been here for a number of years since the community forest presented their first check to City Council that resulted in a new track for our community back in 2008. And ever since, it's just made my heart beam every time that community group has come forward. I believe I have a good working relationship with most, or all of the board. And I would like to suggest an amendment to the motion on the table, and that is, I would, as the mayor's alternate to the Community Forest Board, which I am this term, I would also like to be added to the meetings with the Community Forest Board.
We have a seconder for the amendment. Any discussion on the amendment? Councillor Elliott.
I think that a working group with 3 on it works fine. I just didn't want to be disrespectful of any thoughts the community forests had in bringing them to you around. And I wondered if there was the suggestion from the community forest for 2 on each side, or did that come from yourself, Mayor? And I think I'm fine with it. I'm just trying very hard to be cognizant of the relationship and wanting to take the lead of the community forests as far as their thoughts on that.
The concept of having 2 was, it's not a decision-making group, it's simply facilitating process to ensure any items that both parties want to discuss in detail are brought back and those meetings are formed. So any additional? Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not vehemently opposed to the amendments, but I think the intention of the original motion, bringing 2 members forward, I think is the best route, given that there are different views on council on possible ways to proceed and different perspectives and different levels of experience. I support having the mayor and Councillor Elliott, and my preference would be to keep it at that, so that when the discussions come back to council, that it really is a council conversation. So that's my thinking right now. I haven't had a lot of time to think about it because this is a motion or an amendment raised in the moment. But I think my preference at this point would be to keep it at 2. Thank you.
Councillor Doubt.
Yeah, and I respect the Community Forest Board. I think really what we need is a group of people to get together and talk face to face with the Community Forest Board, and then come back to council with recommendations. I don't see a problem with adding a third person. We could have 3 from the community forest as well. We've got other working groups, the intergovernmental working group comes to mind, and that's got 3 from the city and 3 from the Tlamath group. And Councillor Palm is well familiar with the community forest and all the people on the board. So I'm going to support this amendment.
Any further? Councillor Southcott.
Thank you, Worship. I also support it. I've heard Councillor Palm state many times his support and suggestions that both groups get together as a whole, and I would really welcome that, because I think that is the very best way to further the sentiments that you expressed. When we are face to face and engaging each other, we can work things out. I deeply believe that, so I support the amendment.
Just one clarifying comment to the people in the gallery. There is no quorum formed of council with 3 members attending this meeting. So legally, there's nothing that would preclude this from happening other than a vote to deny me the right to be there. Thank you, Worship.
Okay, we have an amendment. All in favor? Opposed? The motion passes. Now to the main motion, Councillor Doubt.
And I'm in favor of the main motion. We're going to have plenty of time to talk about the 2025 budget next week and the week after, but right now it's about talking about how we're going to adjust and how we might need to adapt the community forest bylaw and the relationship between the community forest and the city going forward. I think it needs to improve. I think we need to have some positive discussions about that. Going forward, I want to make sure that this working group is going to be like every other working group, is that council creates the terms of reference for the group. And I would expect to be that. I would hope to see that terms of reference for the working group come back to council for approval very soon, so the work can get underway to do it, and so that everybody in the community knows what the rules are going to be for the engagement between city council and the community forest.
No further discussion. All in favor? Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you, Mayor. I've been trying to use the Teams hands raised button, so there might be an orange hand in the bottom when I want to speak. Yeah, I also support this motion. I also agree that that communication would be improved by signing a working group. I know there might be a wish to just sit down, council and board together and hash things out, and sometimes it's easier to hash things out in a closed meeting, but that's not possible. We hold our full council meetings and meetings with a quorum in public, and I think it would be great for a few members of council to be able to just explore some opportunities. But similar to Councillor Dowd, I'd like to get a bit more context about what the terms of reference would be and what the focus of the conversation is. I don't know if that was intended by the original mover, Councillor Elliott, but I think that this motion could go in a lot of different directions, and so, or a working group, and the discussions could go in a lot of different directions. And if council gave some direction to the working group on topics that we were interested in focusing on, that might help discussions off, we wouldn't be limiting it to that. There may be some other topics that the community forest may want to raise, but I would also be interested in that. Thank you.
All right, all in favor of the motion? Oh, sorry, Councillor Elliott, are you voting quickly or did you have another comment?
I'm not speaking to the motion again, but I did want to respond to both Councillor Dowd and Councillor Isaacson. I think due process for a working group is to create a terms of reference as part of your initial meetings. And so I would not be opposed to that. And it is my understanding that that's how things are done.
Right, just before we vote, in my discussions with the chair of River Community Forest, the concept of this working group was they would facilitate bringing items forward that both wanted to meet with. So in a nutshell, it's facilitating the two groups coming together as quickly as possible. All in favor of the motion? Motion passes unanimously. We'll now move to 12.1, which is legislative matters. Proposed bylaw 2775. CAO?
Yep. Through the chair, this is a bylaw that you've got up for adoption to amend the Waterworks Regulation Rates. So it's just before you.
I'm going to call a 2-minute recess. Okay. 15.1, sorry for the interruption.
Through the chair, council gave first, second, and third reading to this bylaw on February 27th. So it's now before you for adoption. And so what this is doing is amending as per your direction, water rates bylaw 2425 with updates as per your direction. Thank you.
Councillor Almeida.
I'll go ahead and read the motion. As CAO mentioned, we've already discussed this at our previous council meeting. I move that the City of Powell River Council Waterworks Regulation and Rates Bylaw 2425, 2015, Amendment Bylaw 2775, 2025 be adopted.
Seconded by Councillor Isaacson. Any discussion? All in favor? Passes unanimously. 12.2, Draft Bylaw 2753.
Okay, through the chair, as our corporate officer pointed out, this particular bylaw in front of you is an amendment to the 2024 financial plan, and it captures council's direction through 2024 and into 2025 to amend the current 2024 5-year financial plan. And this is a legislative requirement. So where we've made adjustments because of grants and other things that you've approved, this is something that we have to do to update the 2024 financial plan. And Ms. Dennison is available if you have any specific questions. Thank you.
Councillor Almeida.
Okay, I'll start us off, three parts. So I move that the 2024 5-year financial plan bylaw 2742, 2024, amendment bylaw 2753, 2025 be read a first time.
Seconded by Councillor Southcott. Councillor Dowd, do you have a question?
I have a comment, Mr. Mayor. I'm in favor of this. I just want to point out, because there was a lot of discussion, I think, and some misunderstanding about what this bylaw is about earlier. And this is a change to the 2024 financial plan and budget. It reflects things that we've decided to do since we approved that 2024 to 2029 5-year plan. And it doesn't include any new spending for 2025. Any purchase of vehicles from Canada, where we should buy them all from, would happen next week, over the next couple of weeks at budget approvals and discussion for that. So I wanted to provide some comfort to people, as this is actually just about amending the bylaw to reflect what we've actually already done rather than creating new spending.
See a hand, did I?
Councillor Elliott.
Oh, Councillor Elliott.
Yes,
have your
thank
hand
you.
up?
I do. Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to let folks know that I'm in favor of this. We are updating our bylaw to reflect all of our decisions through 2024 that added things to the budget because of new revenues or projects that happened after we adopted the bylaw for 2024. So all of those things were done with approval from council. There is no changes to the 2025 budget, and it still reflects what was in the 5-year plan back when that bylaw was adopted in the beginning of 2024. It does not reflect the recent changes to our draft. None of those things are part of this bylaw. The bylaw only reflects decisions to change things throughout 2024. Thanks.
All in favor of the motion? Motion passes unanimously. We'll go to draft bylaw 2757, which is the code of conduct.
We actually have to read the second and third readings.
2 more. Thank you.
I move that 2024 5-year financial plan bylaw 2742, 2024 amendment bylaw 2753, 2025 be read a second time.
Councillor.
I move that the 2024 5-year financial plan bylaw 2742, 2024 amendment bylaw 2753, 2025 be read a third time.
Councillor Southcott, all in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you. We'll now move to draft bylaw 2757 to our CAO or our CO.
Through the chair, what you have before you today is the draft code of conduct bylaw 2757 with a recommendation from staff that you give it first, second, and third readings. I'd like to remind the community and council that this is something that you identified on your strategic priorities. You've been working very hard on this particular code of conduct. I have Ms. Walls who can give us a bit of background on how we got to this draft before you. And I also have our corporate officer, Stephen Fleming, available to answer any questions. So Ms. Walls, over to you. Thank you.
I'm just going to comment on it, dive right in. And we spent a lot of time working on this code of conduct. Actually, since the election in 2022, it's been on our plate to work on and draft. And we've had some consultants involved, some lawyers involved, a lot of different discussions by council. And I just want to say the most important thing about council, about a code of conduct, is that councillors, all the people involved with it, read the code of conduct ahead of time and try to comply with it. Hopefully, that's how it'll work. It's a good document, and it will be effective if people read it and follow it and do that. If they use it as a tool to hammer and attack other people, it's not going to be very good. It's not going to work out well for anybody. I'm hoping people will take this in the spirit it's intended as a guideline for behavior, try to follow it as best they can, and that might improve relationships.
We have a motion, Councillor Almeida.
Actually, I have a question for our corporate officer, and I'm sure there might be some curious people in the gallery that might think like I do. We just read 12.2, where we read it first, second, and third time, 3 separate votes, and this one is a combined first, second, third, and 1 vote. So I was just curious what differentiates doing it separately versus altogether.
Your Worship, it's a bit of an experiment. My preference is if you can give all 3 readings in one motion, do it. It's much quicker. It is, the community charter allows you to do that. The short answer is I wrote this report, so that's why I did the resolution that way. And it's part of also a transition of ways, as from some of my earlier comments, to try to streamline council business to the business that's before you and not get too caught up with unnecessarily process just for the sake of process. So there are some bylaws that you're not allowed to give all 3 readings on at one meeting, but the charter is quite clear that the majority of bylaws you can do it as one, so why not take advantage of that? And unless council has some strong objections, that would be my general recommendation, unless there's like really good reasons not to.
Thank you for the clarity. I'm all for efficiency. I'll go ahead and read it. I move that City of Powell River Code of Conduct Bylaw 2757, 2024 be read a first, second, and third time.
Seconder, Councillor Southcott. Any further discussion? All in favor? Passed unanimously. Now move to item 14, which is committee recommendations. 14.1, the Harbour User Advisory Committee recommendations. Would like to speak to that?
Through the chair, with pleasure, our corporate officer will be taking this one for us. Thank you.
Your Worship, when this first came to council, council directed it back to staff just to get staff comment on the recommendations. So council could make a decision having both the recommendations from the committee and the comments from staff onto that. This is a new process that I think leads to a more full information for council when making decisions from advisory committees, and would be a new practice moving forward. There'll be times when the staff position might be different than the recommendation, but that would be spelled out as to why, and that's not in any disrespect to the committee, just sort of speaking generally. In this case, you have staff comment on the 3 recommendations from the committee, and with the staff recommendations that correspond to each. This was circulated among different departments to get their various inputs, and so you now have the recommendations from staff to consider.
Thank you. Councillor Southcott.
Would you like, I can move this if that's what you like, Your Worship. I move that council direct staff to include in their 2025 work plan appropriate harbour pump out station signage and marketing, and that council direct staff to research and bring forward a council consideration amendments to the marine insurance provisions for the North Harbour Rates and Regulations Bylaw 2702-2022 and South Westview Harbour Rates and Regulations Bylaw 2718-2022, and further that council direct staff to include in their 2025 work plan appropriate South Harbour signage improvements subject to existing budget.
Seconded by Councillor Almeida. Any further discussion, questions? Councillor Southcott.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would love to support this, but the report and my past knowledge of the harbor operations since I returned here in 2006, was involved with ad hoc groups since then, and have attended all of the advisory committee meetings that I've been able to get to. I think I only missed one. Gives me really great reservations, and I'm not going to go through the whole works of them. So I'm just going to mention 2 or 3. I'm going to start with the second resolution. Insurance is required everywhere on the coast now. Transients are required by almost every harbor that I've been in to produce insurance, proof of insurance, if they're asked. But the only time I've ever been asked was Cole Harbour Marina in Vancouver. I do carry my insurance documents, so this is absolutely has no priority at all. It could be included in the next edition of the Rates and Regulations Bylaw for both harbors. So I have no concerns there, but I don't think that there should be any time wasted on dealing with this from a staff standpoint. Number one, the first recommendation in the background information, 4 hours of the pump out guaranteed being open is highly inconsistent with everywhere else on the coast that has a pump out. Lund, for example, you don't get to even come into that, into where the pump out is without the wharfinger's evil eye watching you. It is for one purpose, and that is for the pump out. So I wish I could trust that this will simply be, and this is the way it is everywhere else as well. Pump outs are rare on the coast. If you're coming out of Desolation Sound and Powell River is the first place you hit, you want to pump out. But really the most important part of this is that it is an essential part of this community's welcome to transient boaters who bring money into this community. If you come in and pump out, you're probably going to tie up for the night, and you're probably going to go eat out, spend money here, etc. These people are generally well-heeled. For years and years, many of us have wanted to attract more transient boaters, and welcome is utterly an essential to do that. A pump out being available is a critical part. So I wish I could trust that was going to be, that kind of thinking was going to be adopted, but the report does not give me confidence in that at all. Number three, there's an inconsistency in number three in our own policy. And that basically is that starting in 2018, we were talking about food trucks down there. Sometime around that time, 3 sitting councillors did an ad hoc pop-up public opinion desk. And over a few hours, people walking up and down the seawall contributed, and we got almost 500 responses. Food trucks, or something to that effect, were the biggest request. Also, this would all be a major factor that the city wouldn't even have to look after, because these are people who want to bring their own free enterprise into the harbor area, which would provide a real element of welcome for transient boaters. But the problem is 3 designated food truck locations were not established. What was then, this is the language that's in this in the report. What was established was provision for 3 food trucks, but no designated location. And that is the fundamental problem. When food trucks have gone down there, they end up in fights with people over parking, which isn't controlled either down there. So my recollection of the discussion, and this goes back to the ad hoc group I coordinated during COVID times over Zoom, was that there just be some lines painted or a sign or 2 put up so that the area for the food trucks is reserved, as it is suggested in the report, but that hasn't happened yet. So I can't support this, and I would move, if we don't support this, that we send it back to staff for consultation with the advisory committee, which is probably a group of the most expert marine professionals and in this community. We have like a consultant group that we're not paying for. They're all volunteer. So I do not support the recommendations. It needs more work. Thank you.
Councillor Palm.
Yes, Your Worship, thank you. Through the chair, I'd like to just add a few comments that Councillor Southcott has touched on in regards to these 3 items. I agree with his comments on the 3 items. I have heard from members of my advisory committee today that they're not really happy with what came back They've got some other ideas and suggestions. So at the end of my discussion with a couple of those gentlemen today, when I met with them this afternoon, instead of sending these back or not agreeing with them, we would like to see these passed tonight and sent back to the committee to have further discussions with staff so that we can flush them out a little bit more, because this is a work in progress, and the advisory committee is, I don't want them to walk away discouraged. I want them to stick to the job that they've signed up for, because they're dedicated professionals in this regard. Their suggestions are come from years of experience, and I don't want them to abandon the cause, because why they're there is to make voting and use of our harbors better for residents and also better for all transients. So more people are coming to our community to help business, to help our community. So my suggestion is we pass the three items tonight, and it will come back to the advisory committee for follow-up and further direction.
Any further discussion? Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you, Mayor. So I have to express a little bit of confusion. I feel like items 2 and 3 do address Councillor Southcott's concerns, but maybe just not worded in a way that are clear or as straightforward and direct as the committee recommendations are. There's inconsistency with transient insurance requirements, and item 2 asks staff to research and bring forward council consideration amendments. And so if we, in order for us to amend those bylaws, staff do need to come back to us with those amendments. And so I feel like the second part of the motion meets the intention of the committee, but just worded in a different way, so that we're giving staff clear direction on which bylaws need updating. Third item, Councillor Southcott, you mentioned, you just need to draw some lines or, put up a sign related to the South Harbour. And I think this last one talks about signage improvements subject to existing budget. I would love to see the South Harbour have an economic development strategy, and we are not yet in a position staff-wise and finance-wise and planning-wise to implement any such a thing, but some basic signage improvements could be that first step. And so that third motion, I think, again, meets part of the spirit in the sense of what's achievable in the short term. The first one, I think is tougher, because I think depending on your intimate experience with the harbor, you have different opinions on what's working and what's not. And in lieu of, and so that first one, I am less. It is different than the committee recommendation and doesn't follow that spirit. But I feel like the second and third do. I feel like all of these motions would be an improvement. And so even the first one, though it doesn't completely align with the committee recommendation, improving signage and marketing would be a part of that potential improvement. I want to express reservations about passing these and sending them back to committee. If we pass these, that gives staff permission to work on those and not to re-question things at the committee level. And so as the staff are working on these, if this is passed and they have, for example, updated insurance provision recommendations in a bylaw amendment, then at that point, the liaisons on council to those committees, it would make sense for them to say, hey, you guys, this is what staff came back with, let council know if you agree with these or not. And so I do want to express hesitation about sending things back to committee and to staff. If we direct staff, then staff work on these. If we want to refer these back to committee, then we refer them back to committee. But I think those are two are kind of opposing wishes. And so I think we need to decide whether or not this goes back to committee or whether this goes back to staff or whether we don't pass them and do nothing. My preference at this point would be to pass these because I feel like these move us along. And as things get implemented and they are working or not working, or they come back to council and they're working and not working, for example, with the bylaw amendments, at those times, I would be very interested to hear whether or not we're moving in the right direction. Thank you.
Councillor Doat.
Okay, I'm kind of torn here because I hear Councillor Southcott and Councillor Palm, who, attend all of the committee meetings and talk to all of the Harbour users on the committee. And this whole process was created to get input from Harbour users and suggestions. I see the solutions as falling short of what the committee was asking for, and the two councillors, agreeing that they think it falls short. I hesitate to approve something that doesn't meet the needs that everybody has, and you can't approve it and reject it at the same time. So I would be more in favor of postponing a decision on that and having the people on the Harbour Users Committee work with staff to try to create a more firm resolution, a better description of what will be done in 2025 around the pump out station, a better description of what could be done about food trucks, because I think even so it might be an attractant to transient boaters, it's also a pretty good place to go and sit in the afternoon and have a hamburger or maybe some interesting Canadian sourced food, not bought from the USA. But it's, it could become a bonus for the community. But I would hesitate to say, okay, do this for now, and then we'll start looking over a period of another year or so about other improvements. I'd rather postpone a decision on it and have work going along in the meantime to get a better, more acceptable solution.
To our corporate officer, am I correct that with regard to this item, councillors have one opportunity to speak and their total time is limited to 5 minutes? Is that correct?
Yes, Your Worship.
Great.
And 3 minutes for a response, if there's a question.
Councillor Elliott, have you responded to this motion? Please go ahead then.
Yeah, speaking for the first time. So I really appreciate the work that the Harbour Users Group has done. I think that the motion is quite clear. And part of that motion is asking for staff to research and bring forward considerations around things that are much needed. And the creation of better signage and a friendlier waterfront helps everybody. I love the idea about food trucks. The motion is a little vague on what they're marketing or what have you, but I think I'm in favor of passing the motion and working out the details as something we do with our work with staff and the committee in the future. I don't think we want to make it so hard for committees to make a difference in our community. I think that these are reasonable asks, reasonable recommendations, and people worked hard on them, and they look like good things to do, and I want to vote in favor of them.
We have a motion on the floor. It's been seconded. Councillor Almeida.
Thank you, Chair. Most of this report was like reading Mandarin for myself when it comes to anything about boats. But if I understand everything correctly, reading the recommendations, all these recommendations is directing staff to go to work because the Harbour Committee can't ask staff to do that. Only council can do that. And so there's no specifics listed, and it talks about a policy and a bylaw. And from what I know of municipal politics, those are going to have to come back to our table for revision and confirmation. So if there's specifics that need to be ironed out, they're not listed here right now. And I'd rather see staff start working on these things. If they need to refer to the committee for something, then they can, because now we've directed them to create these things or provide us options to consider. So I think the vagueness is intentional because we're not voting on anything specific. We're just giving staff direction to move forward and start working on some stuff, and then bring us the suggestions to improve the harbor down the road.
Hey, through our CAO.
Yeah, through the chair, if I could echo and build on what Councillor Maida said, the Harbour Committee, this report is intentionally giving you the opportunity to direct us to start the work with the intention that we come back to the Harbour Committee. So drafts of the bylaws would be going to them before they return to you. It allows us to show them options for some of the different pieces that you've got here. So it's kept high level enough. We know the Harbour Committee is a great source of our ability to bounce ideas off. So just giving you a little bit about the intention and why it's high level. And if you've got any questions of the corporate officer, he can also answer as well. Thank you.
So we have a motion on the floor. Yes, Councillor Southcott.
It's basically a question. What is a response? Or was there not allowance for like a, and I'd like to amend this if that is acceptable at this point.
I think
Make an amendment.
If I
Sorry, Your Worship, you'd like me to respond to some of the things that have been raised today? Is that what you'd like me to do?
No, I'm just, so councillors are allowed to make one statement.
Correct.
More than 5 minutes, which I probably used up. But then there was facility for, or opportunity for a response.
3 minutes in response.
And my subsequent question is, can I make an amendment? Is that within our review?
Well, council can make an amendment to a motion on the floor once. So there's no amendment to the motion on the floor at the moment.
I can do that, please.
Yes, continue.
The amendment would be essentially what's been explained already, because I can live with this, with what the Chief Administrative Officer has suggested. And the amendment would be that staff work with the advisory committee in with the three previous recommendations.
Just for clarity from our CAO.
That's already.
Is this not what you stated the process would be?
Through the chair, yes. However, I think what Councillor Southcott is respectfully asking is that that's put clearly, so there's no vagueness around that. So maybe the corporate officer might have some wording that we could add in, and then the intention would be absolutely clear instead of an interpretation, as I've said. Thank you.
Yes, if council would like that clarity. Sorry if that wasn't clear in the report. For number 2, when we looked at the insurance, it was inconsistent. So as was mentioned, the committee can't direct staff. No committee can, you can. And so it needed to be put in a proper motion for you to consider, do you want staff to spend time on this or not, is your policy question before you today, if I can put it that way. And it was noted the insurance provisions are inconsistent, and we would bring back, if council wants, a more robust insurance provisions, and that would go to the committee first. Secondly, with respect to the pump out station, if you want to regulate the pump out station use, you have to do that by bylaw. You cannot do that by policy. The tool for council to regulate and impose conditions is a bylaw, not a policy. So that is an option for you should you want to go that route. And then thirdly, staff saw the recommendations complementary to what the committee wanted to do, not contrary to what they wanted to do, and tried to have some of it at the staff level just to get these things done quicker rather than later. So if council wishes to explicitly add and they be brought back to the committee as part of the implementation, that's of course within your prerogative to do so.
We have a suggested amendment. Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Palmer, are you seconding it?
Yeah, and I have a comment, Your Worship, and if I may. And that is, I agree with Councillor Southcott and Mr. Fleming that if we want to get anything done prior to the boating season in 2025, we need to get staff working and coming back to the advisory for further direction and help, and everybody's working together in this front.
Any further discussion before we vote on the amended motion? Amendment. All in favor of the amendment? Passed unanimously, and I will go to the main motion as amended. All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you. Okay, we'll now move over to introduction of notice of motions. Seeing none, public clerk. Councillor Pong.
Are we on introduction notice of motion number 17?
We are.
Yes, I have a notice of motion I would like to put forward. I cannot talk to it, so I'm just going to read it. And if Ms. Wall needs this in writing, I have that for staff, and we don't have to belabor the point tonight if council is fine. So I'm going to just read this. So this notice of motion hopefully will come forward on March 20th, 2025 at the council meeting from Councillor Palm. And it will read, whereas the Community Forest Board has been asked to join a working group to liaison with the city and form recommendations to council regarding the community forest, that the motion previously passed by council that referenced 10% going to nonprofit organizations for up to $250,000, that needs to be defined on how that motion reads, be put on hold until discussions with our Community Forest Board members is concluded. That is the motion, Your Worship.
Okay. Any additional notice of motions? Great. We'll move to 18, which is public clarification. Mr. Okay, please come forward. Introduce yourself.
Roger Whitaker, citizen of Powell River, and thank you, Your Worship, for the opportunity to be here tonight. Two questions. The first one is, does not the City Council already have a member of City Council sitting on the Powell River Community Forest Board?
Yes.
So how did communication break down? This would be like forming a working group to go engage with the regional district to find out how we can better get along when we already have two members there. So
the simple answer is they have meetings. Their meetings are not every week, every month. So in discussing with their chair, it was agreed that there may be things that come up that could be put on agendas quickly. So that's the rationale.
I see.
For example, if council only met every 3 months, right, and there are items that need to be addressed, we'd look for a method of putting something in place to make sure that it didn't wait 3 months before it could be addressed.
Okay. Well, maybe you should form a working group for the RD as well then, sir. Thank you.
Welcome. This is the time to ask questions, not to speak up.
Thank you. My name is Janet May, and thank you for allowing me to ask a question. Several times it's been mentioned that people should come to meetings, and if they want to make a comment, the agenda should address what they are commenting about. I would like to know at what meetings will the community forest funds be discussed? The last one was a special meeting on February 27th when something substantial happened, a motion which I think was a big mistake happened, but I had no idea that that was happening. The special meeting doesn't include the word finance or funding or anything like that. So how am I to know that?
I'll ask our CAO to address the question.
Thank you.
Through the chair, prior to the budget being presented in draft 1, the chief financial officer gave a schedule for all different budget considerations. And so that schedule of all the different items related to budget were on that. So the next time this will come up for council consideration will be March 20th, and that meeting starts at 7 p.m. Thank you.
Is that schedule posted on the website somewhere?
Through the chair, yes, council adopts its scheduled meetings. I believe we did that in January. But in terms of the actual agenda being published, that usually comes out through the chair on the Friday prior to the actual meeting. So that would mean that the agenda for that would be published on the 14th, Friday the 14th of March. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Armida, did you have a comment?
Just wanted to follow up on the CAO's comments to the speaker in the gallery. While we're 2 weeks away from the next council and committee of the whole meetings, the application opportunity to apply to be a delegate is open right now. So the community can reach out info@powellriver.ca to request to be a delegate, and there's a 5-minute presentation window. So if a community group or a team of groups wishes to speak on the agenda, we now know the budget will be on the table on the council meeting, but it doesn't prohibit you from speaking on the topic at the committee of the whole meeting on the 18th as well. So do that this weekend because staff need to prepare the agenda next week.
Yes, hi, Catherine Yorlofson. I have a question regarding the procedure on this. Is it been changed that during question time, we can only ask questions on the items during the meeting? Did it used to be that we could ask a question on anything?
Your worship, certainly under the new procedure bylaw, it must be a question on something that occurred during the meeting.
What was it before?
Same.
Was it the same? You couldn't just ask a general question?
No.
Okay. With the new procedures, is there a time when we can ask a general question?
Your worship, there's no open mic, if you want to put it that way, provision for the public during council meetings. The restriction is to what's on the agenda as per the new bylaw.
Councillor Dowd has a further comment.
Yeah, I just want to try to help out a little bit here. We've had a recent motion by Councillor Southcott that we've asked staff to consider opportunities when we might have something like what the corporate officer has called a question and answer session or a public meeting or a town hall meeting, kind of a forum where we would just have council come and open the floor to people who just had general questions that they wanted to talk about. But the current ruling, the current agenda has an opportunity to ask questions about things that are on the night's agenda. That's why I encourage everybody to keep an eye on the city's website, read the agenda ahead of time so you can get appropriate ideas about what's on the agenda to come and ask questions about that. Then I also look forward to maybe opportunities coming forward in the future to have more of an open mic operation, because people seem to really want to just get up and ask general questions, whatever comes to their mind. And that, frankly, is something we talked about. I talked about during creating the procedure bylaw and trying to find a way to have meetings that begin at a certain time and end sometime.
Okay, and for greater clarification, one of the first things I did when I was elected is to have public meetings with the mayor so that anybody who had an issue they wanted to bring forward could bring forward. Unfortunately, council said that that was not appropriate. So our next speaker, please.
Bishop, just want to add to your comments. I would really encourage you to bring back a motion to that effect again that includes yourself and council at public meetings. I think it has a reasonable chance of passing. I would encourage you to do so.
Thank you.
And secondly, just to clarify for the public, in terms of a delegation request to city, because you have to have that delegation request in the Tuesday before the council week, whatever you're bringing forward, you won't know what's on the agenda next week. So you can pretty well bring anything forward as a delegation and speak to it. I think, corporate officer, isn't that correct?
Your worship, there are some restrictions for what could be a delegation, a topic of municipal interest or concern. So there is an attempt to have delegations speak for matters that council has some kind of jurisdiction over. So there is and that would be part of the back and forth that staff would have with someone who makes a request. And also, just while we're on delegations, the new procedure bylaw has a maximum of 3 delegations to a committee of the whole and 1 to a council meeting.
Great. To our next speaker.
Evening, Council. Ted Vizzuti, concerned citizen of Powell River. In regards to the community forest, I'm just asking a question. Right now, there is a bylaw, I do believe, that's in place that council and the community forest put in to the system many years ago that showed a 60-40% split. I'm just wondering why this has failed in your eyes and needs changed.
I'm going to rule that that was not on the agenda today, but you're welcome to come back at a later date.
Okay, thank you very much.
Please. Go ahead.
Good evening.
Evening.
Yes, good evening, Mayor. This is Sherry Burton. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm seeking clarifications with regards to Agenda Item 12.3, Code of Conduct. For Section 11 in general, does it cover conduct on all forms of media, including correspondence, not just social media? For Section 9A, what is considered derogatory and who makes that determination? And my final clarification is, once the Code of Conduct is adopted going forward, will Section 9A address such instances of a councillor in writing and on social media referring to concerned community members as a lynch mob?
Yes, to the corporate officer.
Your worship, so the general Section 9 speaks to general conduct. The reason there's an explicit section on social media is to make it clear that council members who choose to have personal social media accounts, those are also covered by the Code of Conduct. The city does not provide you with social media accounts, but they do provide you with an email address, for example. So that's why there's an explicit to make sure people understand that social media is included in the Code of Conduct. It is covered in Section 9 in a general way. This just makes it explicit. In terms of a definition of derogatory, that's always specific to the case before. Any type of Code of Conduct complaint is always adjudicated on a case-by-case basis based on the facts at that time. And so there's a bit of a moving, it would depend on the context, Your Worship. The other thing to keep in mind is should council adopt this in 2 weeks' time, when this will be up for adoption, it is not retroactive. the code of conduct would come into effect on date of adoption. And so anything that may have occurred prior to date of adoption, you can't make a code of conduct complaint on. So that's because it's not in force yet. And that there's no retroactive ability to a bylaw.
Thank you for that response, Corporate Officer. So just so I understand the code of conduct, only council can lodge a code of conduct complaint, not a public, correct?
Your Worship, I believe a council member, committee member, staff member may submit a complaint to the corporate officer. This is section 19. So that's what it says right now.
Thank you. So the community has no recourse. I just want to note that the Cambridge Dictionary for definition for derogatory is showing strong disapproval and not showing respect. The Merriam Dictionary definition is expression of a low opinion, disparaging. So that's what I consider derogatory. Thank you for the opportunity to ask clarifications.
You're welcome. Our next speaker, please.
Hello, Roger Artigs again. I would just like a clarification on this public clarification period. I don't see anywhere in the bylaw that it mentions the word agenda. It just says clarify items discussed by council, committee of the whole, council or committee of the whole at that meeting, which seems to me that we've discussed a lot of things tonight that aren't necessarily on the agenda and that they would be open for questions. Am I reading that correctly?
Your Worship, council meeting is you discuss what's on the agenda, so I don't want to get into a pedantic discussion with the intervener. But that is, I think, what was discussed today, if I could put it like lawfully, if I can use that in very loose terms, that is, you can ask a question on what council business was conducted today. Unlike public input period, there's no restrictions as to which subheadings on the agenda you can speak to. From call to order to now, council business, you can ask council a question on.
Okay, thank you. Regarding the Community Forest Working Group, in light of the public's perception that there was a lack of information sharing and engagement, how do you see us in the public keeping abreast of the developments in the working group and the relationship with the community forest?
Well, I think the simple answer is there would be reports back to an open council meeting. There would be discussions at an open council meeting. And if it was deemed necessary, there would be communications to the public by the staff.
Okay, thank you. There also tonight, there was... Oh.
Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, while we conduct all of our business in public, as is lawful, it does require following council meeting agendas being published to know what's being discussed. I know that there are some times where I know something that has been published on an agenda and I let people know about. So I personally share things, the agendas on my social media, but also, for example, I'm a liaison to the Foundry. And so if there's a decision made at council that might impact Foundry, I would, as liaison to that group, let them know. And so the best way, although it is time intensive, is to follow the release of council agendas, which generally happen the Friday before the meetings. And then I also, personally perform my service of what I feel is my service and letting people know by sharing on social media. But it's imperfect. It requires people to be on top of things to know when something's going to be discussed, and or some council members may say, oh, I saw this on the agenda and I know that certain people might be interested, and so I'm letting them know about it. And so there's a couple different ways, but the formal way is through the release of agendas, and people following along with council business. It's imperfect, but it is the system that that we have within the capacity that we have. Thank you.
Councilor Almeida.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to add a little extra clarification on top of Councilor Isaacson's comments. Because the working groups are not a quorum of council, the other 4 members of council are also finding out information at the same time as the community is in those cases. Unlike the Harbour Committee that Councilor Palm leads as a committee of council, those are open meetings that the public can attend or even, I believe, watch online. So those conversations can be caught as they happen, but all the working groups, any working group that gets developed, the rest of council only finds out about any topics or ideas as they get reported back to council or if any decisions need to be made.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, one last question. I think I still have some time. There was tonight you guys were talking about respect, that we should be respecting the council. I would just like to say that I witnessed a bit of what I would consider disrespect to the 2 speakers during the public input session ahead of me. Unless you people are mind readers, you don't know that what the person is saying is going to lead towards a question, such as right now I'm rambling a little bit.
You have a question?
But I
You have a question
that's about to come up, and that is, are you going to respect this public? And when we're trying to get around to a point that may take a little bit of time to develop.
Yes, if it's consistent with what's on the agenda, and we will always respect it. We're not perfect, but people like you will let us know when we're not being perfect, and we'll adjust. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Galinsky, do you have any questions?
Councilor Isaac. Make a comment.
Thank you. Councilor Isaacson, you had some additional information that hasn't been repeated yet?
Yes, thank you. In response to the last speaker's questions, I know I am often a person that raises a point of order, and I try to wait a little bit to give people a bit of grace rather than intervening directly, unless it's clear to me where people are going. But I do try to provide a bit of leeway and give people space, but it's a challenge, it's a balance, and I'm not always perfect, and that's why it's up to the chair to decide on points of orders that I might raise and decide how to move forward. Thank you.
Anybody else online? Oh, here in person.
Yes, it's Mark Hassett again. Here I'm back. I got a question. It's going to take me a bit to get to it, but 4 of you have been in this chamber for 8, 10, 12 years. And when you ran for council this time, all of you ran on open and transparent government. Okay, you were going to be open with the public, because Mayor, you were many times in here complaining about the closed meetings that they used to have, which isn't near what it has been. But where I'm going with this is, some time ago when the code of conduct came in, was first getting looked at, I stood up to this mic and I asked Councillor Southcott if he was trying to stop the people from speaking. And Councillor Dowd answered, and he said, no, we are not trying to stop the people speaking. Well, I guess what I would like to ask today, do you believe that Councillor Isaacson's code of conduct has stopped the people from speaking?
I personally do not believe that. I think that was consistent with the procedures that we have in place, and it's our responsibility as elected officials to follow the procedures that are in place.
Correct.
Councillor Dowd.
So we just gave first 3 readings to a code of conduct bylaw that is council's proposed code of conduct bylaws. It's not Councillor Isaacson's code of conduct. It was created by all of council working together for a long period of time. And my efforts are to allow people to have opportunities to speak to council in a respectful way that has something to do with the business that's on the agenda each night. So that's my intention. I think that's the plan of the Code of Conduct, and I think we're trying to get through it and do what we can. So closed meetings are a whole other idea, and I'm not going to talk about those other than to say that I like to have as few as possible.
Councillor Southcott.
Thank you, Your Worship. Earlier, Councillor Dowd mentioned a motion that I brought last fall before Christmas, and it was sent to staff, and that was to develop some kind of format so we could have meetings like this, and without being interfered with or without being impeded, we could have communication that was not impeded by the procedure that we have developed to hold business meetings. There's a lot of business the city conducts that is the responsibility of this council, which is like a board of directors. We need to have clear communication. I spend an awful lot of my life on the phone, on email, texting, etc. I try to stay off social media, which maybe I should have a couple of days ago. Anyway, you know, we're not all perfect. We're human, but we all here want to communicate openly. So yeah, you're right, Mr. Hassett. There's a desire unanimously on this council for open and clear communication. And it's a huge challenge to try to help everybody feel communicated to.
Correct. I don't dispute it. My hat is off to each and every one of you that sit in them seats. I've been here for 12 or 14 years sitting over there, not in one of them seats. My hat's off to you for that. But where I'm coming, what I'm asking is, you've been here for 12 years, I think. You've got 3 terms? 10? Is it as open and transparent today and welcoming to the public to speak as it was in your first or second term? That's what I'm asking.
We ran on the same, wishing for the same thing back then. Transparency was huge, a huge desire before I first ran. We're way off the topic of.
Okay, anyways, you've kind of answered my question. It's not. Thank you. Have a great night.
Anybody online?
Hi, it's Kim Borden-Bridges back again, and I'm just a little bit unclear about this whole community forest thing. So what I'm hearing is it wasn't on the agenda tonight for you to make a decision, but it is in 2 weeks. You're setting up a committee with community forest. So I'm just wondering, when will council be making a decision on this proposed split of funds? Like, is that happening in 2 weeks? Is there room for changing your mind or having enough time to meet with community forest to, I'm sorry, it's just that this information with the budget and 5-year and community forest is all been kind of discombobulating, and I just want to understand, you know, do I come back here in 2 weeks, and is there going to be an opportunity to hear that you've, you know, that some progress has been made in terms of what people have said tonight? Could you just clarify that for me?
Councillor Dowd.
Yeah, I'm going to try to answer your question.
Oh, thanks.
Okay. Thanks for coming tonight. Thanks for everybody for coming. Nice to see so many people interested in what we're talking about. Actually, what we were talking about last week. So it is the community forest grants to nonprofits and use of their funds by the city will be back on the agenda with the 5-year plan and the budget on the 20th of March. Thursday night, 20th of March. I encourage you to come. We talked about it last Thursday. There were 4 people in the room that weren't council members. I was kind of disappointed at that because I've been telling people that there are important things coming up to the budget and we'd like to hear from the public. And I'd like to hear from you on the 20th of March when we're going to be talking about it again, and hopefully everybody else will be here and interested in contributing. And that's a positive way to do it. And, you know, we can't go and knock on everybody's door and ask them if they're sure that they know what we're talking about tonight. But our first motion to discuss how we would divide the funds between the community forest, nonprofits, and the city happened back on December 17th.
Okay, no,
It
I'm
was
just.
announced, it was talked about
Okay,
before.
I think the answer is
March 20th.
thank you.
Thank you.
Great. We have a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We no longer need a motion to adjourn. Our business is over and we're at almost 9 o'clock.
No, I'm sorry, you do not have a chance. Sorry, corporate officer, would you just let our corporate officer respond first?
Your worship. Okay. It is 9 o'clock, so you do need a motion to continue.
In favor? Continue your question.
Your worship, councilors, my name is Rod Tisdale. I'm representing Greg Hemphill in the community forest. Greg's out of town. I'm on vice president. And regarding the establishment of the working group, we look forward to working with the working group starting Monday. I'm ready to go, and we'd like to get that going. I just want you to know that this is the best community forest in British Columbia.
I understand you want to speak.
Right.
But respect the procedure. If you have a question, please ask the question.
Okay, and regarding of the communication, do you think the reason that the communication between the community forest and the council and the city got so bad is because we didn't get any response to our January 9th, 2025 letter, that it wasn't posted on the website like we were told it was, and we're not sure if it was circulated to the councilors? I'd like to know if you think that was the reason that the communication has broken down so much since then.
Ask our corporate officer, CAO, to respond.
This is the letter where we asked for you to rescind your decision about the 10-90 split.
Through the chair, I do believe the letter was shared with all of council. I'm maybe going to check with our deputy corporate officer to confirm that, but I do believe it was shared with all of council, and it was for council to direct us accordingly, which you've done in different ways. Through the chair, I think that's the best response I can give right now. Thank you.
I didn't hear hardly a word you said. It's so quiet.
Okay, I beg your pardon. Is that better? Yes. Yeah, sorry. I do have a low voice. I was letting council know that the letter was circulated to each of them, and that council has directed us with other directions related to community forests. And so we were not directed to, as staff, to respond because they have given us other courses of action related to the budget and community forest. Thank you.
We received no reply, and it wasn't posted. Still not posted.
Okay, through the chair, Ms. Walls, I'm not sure if you're able to confirm whether or not it was posted and whether there was a request for that. Thank you. Maybe through the chair, if we could look into this further and get back to Mr. Tinsdale, I think is his name, and Community Forests, while we confirm that. Thank you.
And I just would like to finish off by saying that to the councillors that talked about the wonderful concert and the hockey game and the film festival, that are going on this weekend. If it wasn't for 20 years, we started long before 18 years, we started before that. We've been at it over 20 years to get the license and have a community forest. Been 20 years of volunteers' efforts in this town, hardworking and qualified, skillful people with lots of experience, volunteering for 20 years to create this working forest for our city, that there wouldn't be new seats in the Evergreen Theater for them to sit in and listen to the concert. There would not be
All right, I'm going to interrupt you.
a scoreboard for the hockey arena, and the film festival would have had a hard time.
This is why
Thank
you
you.
don't have communications. You know, both parties have to listen. You know? We have procedures. If you don't like the procedures, ask council if they will change the procedures.
What does this
When
have
you
to do with
come
procedure?
here And you do not respect the procedures.
Mr.
we
Mayor,
can't
what does this have to do with procedure? Where is our answer? Where's the procedure to reply to our letter of January the 9th?
Your chair about the December 9th letter. Okay?
I'm sorry, what was that?
I talked to the chair about the letter you referred to. If he didn't discuss it with the rest of council, I would suggest you talk to him. Right? Thank you. Greg Hempel is the chair. Councillor Doak.
Yeah, and the question that started out, question I heard, which was a good question, is where did the communication break down and why? And I don't have the answer for your question. Okay, it's probably out there somewhere, but I don't have it. I think what I want to say is I think the council made an important step today in setting up a working group that should cooperate with the community forest and work together to come to a solution. That's the important message that I think we should take away. We can worry about how communication might have broken down and why it could have been better, but I'd like to focus on working to make it better going forward and to solve the problem and to make sure that the contribution of the community forest and the contribution of all the nonprofits and the contribution of council is recognized and goes forward in a positive way. So that's my answer. I think I'd rather focus on how we can work together than try to put blame on anybody for the past.
Thank you, Councillor Dowd, and that's why I proposed the working group. All right, any other people online or in the audience that have questions? Right, ask for a motion.
You want?
If business is done, you can
Meeting
simply
is
adjourn.
adjourned. Thank you.